Russell Raymond was a noble who studied at a magic academy, but as he couldn't control his powers, he was immediately expelled. As a hopeless failure, his father died in a war against the Empire, and with no other choice, Russell wandered the world, working as a mercenary, the only thing he had from his past life. It was a ring with the eye of a dragon. One day, when luck had completely turned its back on him, and he had no more money, he had to agree to clean the dust. In a museum, Layla found the skeleton of an ancient dragon, and as soon as she approached, her ring vibrated and awakened the ancient dragon. It granted him its power, and transported him back in time to when Russell was still studying at the academy. In an instant, he regressed in time. He could vaguely hear his teacher angrily shouting at him, followed by the unmistakable sound of a book hitting directly on his head. He jolted back to attention as the teacher criticized him for dozing off in class. Of course, Russell has no idea what is happening, or why Professor Hilbert is suddenly haunting him. After all, as far as he remembers, Hilbert has already passed away. He looks around curiously, glancing left and right at the students, then at himself. It doesn't take long for him to realize that somehow he has been sent back to the past. Meanwhile, Hilbert expels him from the classroom as punishment. Russell, on the other hand, still has no idea what kind of magic could have triggered his regression. Now that he thinks about it, he is sure it must be the work of that dragon that spoke to him. Then he realizes that his ring is missing, which makes him wonder for a moment if his mother might have something to do with it. At that exact moment, the professor leaves the classroom. Even though our boy apologizes for his mistake, the professor is not satisfied and invites him to the office for a one-on-one meeting. Although Russell is in trouble, he is enjoying this feeling, but he soon receives a hard slap on the back of his head. Of course, it's a group of classic bullies here to mess with our boy. One of them, a blonde guy, decides to slap Russell too, but his friend stops him because the teachers are watching. Russell recognizes the blonde guy as Frederick. Frederick then shoots a deadly glare and orders him to follow to the bathroom. Valuing his life with that, they walk away, while Russell feels excited again for finally having the chance to experience all this. Suddenly, his notification system urges him to teach these bullies a hard lesson. In exchange, he will earn a magic stone. Russell is not sure what kind of illusion this is, but before he can find out, Frederick calls him again, telling him to follow them, or he can try to run away. Either way, they wouldn't care since these guys are clearly asking for it. Russell makes a decision and decides to teach them a lesson before doing anything else. After several years living the life of a mercenary, the superficial threats and death glares Frederick gives him are nothing compared to the terror he felt facing monsters. Compared to that, these guys are like teddy bears you can hug. Anyway, when they enter the bathroom, Frederick throws a daring taunt at Russell, but my guy responds with the same energy, calling him a bastard bug. The trio is perplexed to see him exuding this unwavering confidence, but they are not here to take any nonsense. The most anxious of the group clenches his fist to throw a punch, but Russell flies past him and delivers a blow, a devastating strike that knocks the guy to the ground. The second, seeing his friend fall, also charges at Russell, but he too receives a strong punch, strong enough to knock him out with a single blow. Even so, this is not enough to scare Frederick. In fact, he is becoming more convinced. He throws his smoke pipe aside and prepares to fight. He throws a punch at Russell while mocking him, saying that since Russell can't use magic, he learned some cheap martial arts. This, he claims, is to be expected from a fallen family. Frederick then puts 4 rings on his fingers, reminding Russell that while magic is prohibited, small artifacts are allowed. With that, he lunges at Russell, but my guy simply grabs the fist coming toward him. He twists Frederick's wrist and watches as his knees buckle in pain. Russell's cold gaze shakes Frederick deeply, and he becomes furious that someone like Frederick dares to mention his family name. With the final punch, Russell takes care of the bastard. After teaching these bullies a hard lesson, Russell leaves the bathroom and sits against the wall on the floor, questioning if he went a bit too far. At that moment, the system notification materializes before him, and he receives the lowest grade magic stone as promised. As soon as the stone is in his hand, the system tells him to consume it. While Russell is unsure if he should really eat it, he believes this must be another opportunity. Mixed with the chance to live life a second time, he begins to chew the stone and realizes it tastes very good. Suddenly, a red energy called mana starts to appear around his body. The energy soon envelops him, and this leaves him startled. The screen notifies him that he has obtained the mana contained in the stone. Suddenly, he feels a sensation coming from his chest, and is still frightened. Our guy suddenly realizes what is happening and places his hands on his chest to stabilize himself. He notices that the mana he consumed is flowing out, so he calms down to let it do its work until it returns. He says that the mana in the circle is increasing. The mana is not just increasing, the mana he received is being absorbed by the magic circle around his heart. He remains calm, and is happy that he is finally stabilizing. Our guy suddenly smiles because it seems he has found a treasure. With this new method, he can finally overcome the narrowing of the mana vein that he always feared. He thinks about his family's downfall and his expulsion from the academy. As if those experiences weren't bad enough, he had to settle for being a third-rate mercenary. It finally seems like he can change the future he predicted. He walks down the hallway with renewed joy, and it seems like things are getting better moments later. Russell knocks on Professor Hilbert's door and is invited in. He enters the room, and the old man tells him to sit down. Russell sits down dejectedly, and the professor calls his name the way elders do when you are in trouble, Professor Rupert. He says that Russell is not being himself today. To help resolve the issue, he continues suggesting what the problem could be. He asks Russell if he is going through something difficult. The professor informs him that he heard a rumor that his classmates are bullying him and wonders if that is the cause. Russell recalls his good memories with Professor Hilbert in his past life, and remembers how he never gave up on him. He finally smiles when it is his turn to respond and remembers he always wanted to say this. He then informs the professor that there is no need to worry. The old man is shocked by his words, and Russell thanks him for asking. The professor coughs, and states that it is his job as a professor to take care of his students. He adds that, however, he will be punished because he dozed off in class today. The professor opens the book in front of him and says that the punishment will not be easy. He receives the task of writing an analytical report on a part of their textbook. Apparently, it is a session that even upperclassmen struggle with. As he speaks, the screen appears again and announces that his new mission is to complete Professor Hubert's assignment. The system informs him that he can obtain additional rewards, depending on the level of completion and the level of satisfaction of Professor Hilbert. The reward is another lower-level mana stone, and something else mysterious. Russell's eyes widen when he realizes that even completing assignments are missions. The professor notices his wide eyes. He then asks if the work is very difficult. Russell says it is not, then thanks the professor. Later, the bear completes the task. After a few hours, he thinks to himself that the task is not as difficult as it seemed. In his past life, he used to study the theoretical part of magic intensely because he was terrible at using mana in practice. But there is something else to pay attention to in this new life. There is something else that is just as important as studying. This thing is called mana vein training. Russell remembers one of his jobs as a mercenary, where he is fleeing from a monster. He explains that the mana vein is the pathway that circulates mana. Mana is absorbed through breathing. Mana is also circulated through the mana veins and collected in the heart. In the flashback, the monster approaches our hero. The monster slams one of its large claws into the ground, and Russell quickly jumps to the side. While he is running, he looks back and notices that the monster is coming to attack him again. He explains that the reversal of the mana flow out of the body is called magic. In the flashback, he performs some circle magic and casts. The fire from his hands is a large amount of fire, and the fire surrounds the monster. The question is that the stronger his mana veins are, the more mana he can collect, and the faster he can release it. After the fire dissipates, the monster is obviously injured. It seems he couldn't release a strong enough fire to hurt him. He realizes that he is in trouble, so he tries to spin a shield to block the monster's next attack before he can complete the spell. To cast the spell, he feels a sudden impact. The monster quickly punches him with its tail. The monster finally advances to finish him off. Still in the flashback, Russell explains that his illness has made fighting monsters an absolute nightmare. He remains on the rock, slightly unconscious. Suddenly, he regains consciousness. He is quickly hit by another blow from the monster that throws him deeper into the hollow stone. He wonders if the heavens sympathized with his unfortunate fate, or if it could have just been luck. The thing is, that fall launched him into an underground location. When he stands up, he groans and tries to find an exit. Inside this place, he finds two grimoires containing strange secrets. Our character walks towards the books and goes to grab them. The first book is called Overvine, and the other is called Wizard Body Back to the Present. Russell runs to continue his mana vein training. He explains that the book called Overvine trains the physical body and expands a person's mana vein. Another book called Wizard Body teaches training that helps replace muscle tissue with a part of the mana vein. In other words, the stronger his body gets, the firmer his mana vein becomes. Russell remembers that the change he experienced doing this as an adult wasn't so much, but since he is in a growth phase now, he will be able to see greater results. Our guy trains vigorously, determined to overcome the narrowing of the mana vein, this time shortly after the sun begins to set while he is still training. Our hero goes to rest near a tree and confesses that he can't take it anymore. He congratulates himself because this amount of training should be enough for his training regimen. For one day, suddenly the screen appears again and notifies him that the mission to practice the ancient skill, called Overvine, requires him to run 5 kilometers, but he has only done 0.05 of 5. The reward for running 5 kilometers is that the speed improvement resulting from practicing the skill will increase. Russell grimaces upon reading the notification to encourage him. The system informs him that while practicing Overvine, he can repeat this mission once a day. The system also adds that based on his progress, the required distance will increase each time. Finally, after he reaches a certain level of Overvine, the mission will no longer appear. He gets alarmed and asks the system what the rush is. The notification sounds like a threat, so he decides to train. He reasons that he barely managed to get such an opportunity, so he can't just stand still and let it slip away. Shortly after, our guy advances more and covers 1.4 kilometers of 5. He pushes further and covers 2.7 kilometers of 5. At this point, his legs begin to tremble. It reaches a point where he needs to take a break because he feels like he has broken his knee. He checks the screen and realizes he has covered 3.6 kilometers, so he consoles himself that he is almost done. He decides to make one last effort with all his remaining strength. Our boy runs like crazy to reach the target late at night. He finally sees the notification that he completed the mission and the rewards, so he lies down on the ground and feels like he will die if he takes another step. The great achievement makes him smile, and he wonders how he will get back to the dormitory. The next morning, Professor Hilbert examines Russell's report and cannot believe what he sees given how detailed it is. He looks at Russell and asks if he is sure that he was the one who prepared the report. Our friend gives a sly smile and affirms that it was indeed him. The professor notices his confidence. Finally, Professor Hubert speaks and says that he is very pleased with his report. Suddenly, the screen appears again and notifies that he completed the mission and will now receive a reward. His rewards are another lower-grade mana stone and an additional gem. Of the same size, he also gains greater understanding of the art of summoning creatures. Because of this increase in understanding, he will have an increase in power, a decrease in mana consumption, and a reduced casting time. Russell realizes that the higher his level of understanding, the stronger he becomes. He quickly decides to take advantage of this. The professor praises his work and says he can leave now before departing. Russell decides to ask the professor for a favor. Moments after Russell asks for the favor, the professor inquires why he would like to use the faculty library. The man mentions that the student library should have enough books to meet all his needs. Our boy informs the professor that he has read all the books in the student library. This seems hard to believe, so the professor asks if he really read them all, to which Russell responds affirmatively. His professor says it is shocking to hear this. However, he states that even if it is true, it is a completely different matter to allow him to use the faculty library. The professor says he will put him to the test to ensure he is qualified for it. Russell gets excited and agrees that this is totally understandable. Shortly after, several mission windows appear, all requesting our guy to complete each task the professor has given him to obtain the rewards while running. He thinks about how many tasks the professor has given him and concludes that he is quite a demanding man, considering that the better one understands the theory, the stronger the magic. Our boy decides that it will be worth it. He is determined to gain access to the advanced knowledge of the faculty at all costs. Eventually, he considers that he will also receive a mana stone from each mission, so it's like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. While he is enjoying his water, someone approaches him and calls his full name. The boy's name is Anton Frederick, and he seems to have some relation to Coma. Anton mentions that Coma, his friend, had to suffer because of him. Russell retorts sharply, asking what is wrong with that, and asks if Anton is there to take revenge. Anton laughs and says it makes no sense to come here to take revenge on him, and his friends laugh with him. He tells Russell to stop deluding himself. He jokes that no one would take revenge on a worthless piece of crap like him. Anton says he prefers to stomp on him than to take revenge. Here the bully passes by him and intentionally collides, reminding them that they will meet in class. Russell remembers that they have class soon, and wonders why Anton is so convinced about this. He suddenly remembers that the class they have together is Practical Magical Combat Studies, where students are evaluated based on their training fights with each other. The downside of this is that in his fights against Anton, in his past life, he was always humiliated in that class. He remembers Anton always winning with fire magic and hovering over him. He smiled and mocked him because he didn't have good mana veins. Russell can't believe he had forgotten foolish mind, that they have to do that. Our boy decides that he has to start preparing quickly for this. Better late than never. Suddenly, the screen notifies him that he has a new mission to reach the second circle, increasing the level of understanding of the attributes he currently possesses that day. Russell spends all his time completing each task the professor gave him and works until nightfall. The next morning, he takes a stack of papers to the professor's office To submit the tasks, the system shows several notifications for each task and tells him that he completed his mission and will now receive his reward that night. Russell returns to the dormitory after a well-spent day and decides to check his rewards. He looks at about 10 mana stones that the system gave him and contemplates what to do with them. A growing uncertainty arises within him. As he picks them up, he wonders if the mana load of his body will be able to handle several mana stones at the same time, without causing adverse effects. Eventually, he seems to accept his fate and proceeds to take the stones. He tells himself that he will have to trust in the training he has been undergoing for so long. A few seconds later, our boy throws all 10 stones into his mouth and chews them for a short while. Nothing happens. Moments later, the mana from the stones is released, and his body is suddenly enveloped by the mana becoming more pronounced, and the whole room is consumed by a bright light. He suddenly begins to feel as if his body is burning to absorb the mana towards his heart. Quickly, he creates a path in his mana veins. Russell begins to create a path to shape the flow of mana. He continues to direct the flow of mana to channel it to his heart. He is clearly feeling some pain. Russell begins to create a path to shape the flow of mana. He continues to direct the flow of mana to channel it to his heart, clearly feeling some pain, but he decides to endure it. Moreover, he begins to spin the flow of mana to draw a new circle around his heart like the first one he has, so that he can achieve a second circle. If he fails to do this correctly, his heart won't withstand it. Our boy carefully draws the second circle but hesitates before reaching the end. Afraid of ruining something, he decides that there is no turning back, so he resolves to finish it. His veins begin to absorb the mana generated as soon as he focuses and completes the circle. Our boy refuses to give up regardless of the consequences. There is no way he can achieve his dream of being a world-class mage without doing this, so he promises himself to reach the second circle. Suddenly, a beam of bright light bursts through the window, and it seems like he is exploding. Moments later, Russell wakes up on the floor and realizes that he has successfully done it. He realizes that he has finally reached the second circle. Finally, the mana flows into his body while he is lying on the floor. Suddenly, the system notifies him that he has completed the mission and will now receive rewards. Apparently, his understanding of elemental attributes has increased significantly. Then the power of each elemental magic has also increased significantly. The next morning, the professor reads all the reports that Russell sent him. He exclaims in surprise and admits that he cannot believe that he managed to complete all those tasks in such a short time. The professor tells him that there is one last question before he can grant him access. It is a more fundamental question compared to the previous ones. The professor asks which of the structures is the most important among the 4 structures that make up magic. The question shocks Russell, who just stands there in silence. Professor Rupert notices his silence and begins to regret asking his student a question that he himself recently discovered to avoid overwhelming him. The professor quickly stands up and proposes to ask a different question. Russell, who had been silent the whole time, begins to answer the question. Even so, the professor is surprised by Russell's confidence, shocked that he has an answer. Professor Hilbert stops talking and listens to him. Russell finally responds that the most important structure in magic is the mental image of the one performing the magic. The professor hesitates for a moment and considers the answer he gave. Professor Hilbert finally asks why he thinks that. Russell thinks deeply about the question before speaking. He says that magic is manifesting something in the real world using mana. The world categorizes this process into 4 different levels. The first level is known as assimilation, where you learn the principles that guide natural phenomena. The second step is to create a mental image, where you visualize what you learned in your mind. The third step is called construction, where you build formulas to manifest the visual image. The final part is manifestation, where the magic will come to exist in the real world, through the formula. Russell adds that the understanding of construction and manifestation can be learned through effort and sufficient studies. However, the mental image is not something that can be achieved through effort. Breaking one's own limits and reaching the freedom of imagination through courage is what determines the level of mental images. Our boy extends his hands and generates a flame to explain his point. He explains that he can choose to pretend that this flame is an arrow and visualize it in his mind. If he does this, the flame will become the magic of the second circle, fire arrow. True to his words, the flame in his hands transforms into the shape of an arrow. Then he says that he can also choose to imagine something else. Apparently, the flame will follow his imagination and become something completely different. He says that he doesn't need to put a limit on his mental visualization, because doing so may allow him to create something that does not exist in this world. The professor just listens attentively and affirms everything he said. Russell said that everything starts with understanding how the world ends, and then twisting the rules of the world to achieve something beautiful. Russell extinguishes the flames and confidently finishes his explanation. Professor Hilbert, who has been listening the whole time, thinks about how Russell seems to have become remarkable. He finally speaks and says that he managed to confirm what the professor was thinking, smiles at him, and says that the student library is too small a world for him suddenly. The system notifies our boy that he has completed the mission of entering the first floor of the professor's library, and he will receive 2 low-quality mana stones later that day. Russell enters the first floor of the professor's library, only for the first floor to seem quite expansive, which he finds intriguing for him. This is very different from the student library. He quickly begins to rummage through the books and find some. He will sit down and start reading the books. For him, these books are more practical than those he normally has access to. Suddenly, a woman enters the library and observes Russell from behind. She finally exclaims to catch his attention and says that he is reading a rather interesting book. Russell is shocked to hear her voice and realizes he is not alone. He quickly drops the book and turns around. Strangely, he sees no one and discovers that the woman somehow disappeared before him, and she signals for him to look ahead. She is dressed like a mage, and Russell recognizes her. The woman smiles at him, and he recognizes her as the Area Snow White, the master of the Flame Tower. He quickly greets her and introduces himself. Russell immediately feels uncomfortable in her presence. This is because she is in the realm of the 8th circle, which few in the world have managed to reach. Despite being over 80 years old, she uses an incredible amount of mana to maintain her youthful appearance. She is the master of the Magic Tower, of the highest ranking of the Red Tower faction, called the Flame Tower. Daria is surprised to learn that he knows her. She pulls a large lollipop out of nowhere and quickly reassures him, saying that there is no need to be nervous. Asking how, as a student, he managed to gain access to the professor's library, she turns to him and asks. Russell informs her that Professor Hilbert had allowed him to use the library. Daria gently exclaims and asks if a man as strict as Professor Hilbert really let him use the library. Our boy begins to smile, realizing that the professor can indeed be a bit strict. She mentions that it makes sense, and that explains why he was learning something quite interesting. When she entered, the woman examines him with her eyes and realizes that he has extremely pure mana and feels that the distribution of his mana is very stable as well. She looks at him again and murmurs that it is rare to find someone like him. Daria walks past him and tells him not to worry. To ease his attention, she assures him that she is not there to scold him or trap him. Russell bows again and thanks her for the kind words. Daria suddenly strikes the ground, and a bright light emerges from the spot. She tells him to grow to the fullest of his abilities. But when he looks back at her, she is nowhere to be found. All that remains of her is the bright light, and it seems she teleported to another place. Russell is stunned and just looks at the best spot where she was after he finishes. Mac leaves the professor's library and quietly closes the door, still shocked by the encounter. While he is still daydreaming, he hears a voice behind, asking if it is our boy standing by the door. Russell looks at the person speaking and discovers that it is Anthony, and his group. Anthony's friend asks why. Russell is leaving the professor's library and asks who he thinks he is. Anton comments that it seems Russell must have kissed some professor's ass, but that does not change the fact that he will not get anywhere. The boys walk away laughing, and Anton tells Russell to keep trying his best. While walking away, he looks back and says that this will not help. Anyway, shortly after, the students gather in the Academy Stadium for magical battle studies in real situations. The first to be called descends to the stadium field and can choose another student to be his opponent. The responsible professor tends to choose the weakest student. This is done so that the student can choose someone of his own level to compete. Suddenly, all eyes turn to Russell, and it seems that everyone expects him to be called Russell. Mentions that he was always the first to be called in his past life. Some boys nearby joke that Russell will be chosen again because he has a condition known as mana vein narrowing. One of the students immediately begins to plead with Russell to choose him as an opponent when called, so they can boost their grades this semester. Another student tells Russell not to choose that bastard, but to choose him instead. The professor notices the confusion and tells all the students to be quiet. He proceeds, choosing a student, and begins to call the first name. Everyone starts whispering that it will be Russell, and some people start laughing. To their surprise, the person called is Anton Frederick. This shocks the students. They are surprised to hear Anton's name and wonder why he is the first. Anton proudly walks up to the teacher and thanks him for calling him. But the teacher says that this is nothing compared to the favors he receives from the Merchant Association. Frederick Russell becomes alert. He tells himself that he hoped this would happen. Anton walks to the center of the field and stops to choose one of the students. He looks directly at Russell and tells him to come down to the stadium. Meanwhile, Professor Hilbert receives an unexpected visit from his teacher, and he tells her that it would have been nice if she had informed him that she was coming. It turns out to be none other than Darstone White. She sits down and says that it's fine. She retorts that it's no big deal for a teacher to visit her student, recalling the student she met in the library. The teacher asks him if he gave a child named Russell an entry pass to the library used by teachers. Hilbert quickly confirms and asks, concerned, if the child made any mistakes. He would say no, but it's just that she hadn't seen something so rare and precious in a long time. Gilbert agrees with her and says that the narrowing of Russell's mana vein is an uncommon condition. Even in this continent, the master said, he is a fool because she wasn't talking about that. Her words shock Hilbert, who promptly raises his head to understand. She informs him that Russell managed to overcome his own problem, and Professor Hubert asks what she means by that. She doesn't speak for a while, and continues with her tea. When he doesn't seem to understand what she is talking about, she finally delivers the news and informs him that the child managed to form his second circle. Professor Hilbert is genuinely shocked and wonders how this is possible. Meanwhile, the two boys take their places and prepare to fight in the Academy Stadium before the match begins. Another screen appears in front of Russell. The screen notifies him that the next mission is to win during the magical training, and he can receive lower-grade magic stones and have a compartment that can carry things. Weighing 40 kilograms, Russell is happy to know that he will have a compartment because this is a magic that only the richest wizards can use. The compartment allows you to store things, so it will be quite useful for storing magic stones. While he is still thinking, Anton calls him and refers to him as an insect. The bully asks if his body is frozen. Anton tells him that his only option to survive this fight is to beg. Our guy just laughs suddenly. Russell covers his entire body with energy and asks Anton if he is talking to him. Anton notices his transformation and wonders if it is what he is thinking while they are talking. The professor coordinating the games tells them to return to their place in the circle so he can start the match. He remembers the magic that Russell just used and wonders if someone with a narrow mana vein was able to reach the second circle, but he quickly dismisses the idea because it is not possible. As soon as the game begins, Anthony quickly casts a second circle magic called Flame Lance. He releases a stream of flames and shoots it directly at our boy Russell. Russell quickly notices the flame coming in his direction and reacts. He quickly conjures a shield that deflects the fire. The fire hits the shield and moves upward, unable to penetrate the shield. Russell keeps the shield in place and continues to withstand the flow of fire. One of the professors observing nearby is shocked by his splendid response. The professor anchoring the game also watches and is shocked by Russell's performance. Anton, who has been casting flames for a while, quickly tires of keeping his arms in place. He is shocked that Russell can withstand the fire attack. Suddenly, the flow stops because his body needs to regulate the mana he is losing. And then he starts to curse because the fire has ceased. Our boy notices the interruption and quickly takes advantage of it because he was waiting for this to happen. Russell also uses a second circle magic, known as Fire Arrow. He quickly launches the arrow at Anton, who has stopped casting flames. Anton is shocked to see him use the fire arrow and immediately tries to react. He begins to wonder if Russell was able to reach the second circle and quickly surrounds himself with the shield to stop the arrow. The arrow collides with the shield, but does not reach him. Anton feels the impact of the fire arrow and wonders how an insect like Russell can fight so much while he still holds the shield to protect himself from the impact of the fire arrow. Even though it burns, he notices something else that frightens him right in front of him. Russell has successfully conjured a second fire arrow. Our boy launches the arrow at him without showing any mercy. The second arrow heads towards Anton's shield. Russell doesn't give him a moment to breathe. The professor conducting the session is shocked and wonders if it's a double launch. The other professor says it's not a double launch, but that his launch speed is so fast that it seems like it is. While they converse, Russell creates another fire arrow. Anton realizes this and wonders if making a fire arrow is all his opponent is capable of. He decides on a secret way to defeat him and changes the structure of his shield. He transforms his shield into one specialized against fire using another second circle magic. Meanwhile, Russell notices the change and smiles because this is what he was waiting for. Anton boasts about his plan to wait until Russell exhausts all his mana on his fire-resistant shield to then counterattack. Contrary to what he expected, Russell cancels the fire arrow launch and begins to cast another spell. The fire in his hand disappears and a strong wind begins to arise. Anton is shocked by the sudden transformation and exclaims, as it seems his plan has been thwarted. He uses a second circle magic called Wind Arrow and launches it directly at his opponent's shield. Anton is hit by the arrow and falls backward. He is surprised that the kid managed to identify the type of shield he was using and modify his launch. The new professor who was watching the fight gasps and wonders if this is the same Russell he knows. Meanwhile, the professor who manipulated the selection to choose Anton cannot believe what he sees and continues to sweat profusely. Anton groans in pain from the impact and loses control of his shield. The impact pushes him back, and he is almost out of the circle. Anger rises in his eyes, and he cannot believe that such a small brat is winning. Before he can make his next move, Russell approaches him and begins to cast another spell. This time, our boy casts one lightning spell. A bolt shoots from his hand and hits Anton right in the chest, throwing him even further back. His eyes roll back and turn white as he groans from the excruciating pain of the impact. He tries to generate fire to counterattack, but is too weak. Russell doesn't give him a chance to breathe, and advances again with another attack. He strikes the bully with another lightning bolt. The professor who favored Anton begins to protest that he does not recognize the type of magic Russell is using, and says that the fight needs to be immediately interrupted. Nearby, Professor Hubert tells the complaining professor to take a closer look at what is surrounding Russell's body, so that he can convince himself that it is indeed magic. The professor quickly glances at Russell's body and is shocked. He sees a glowing aura around Russell and comments, stammering that he is using mana like a knight's aura. Professor Rupert smiles proudly and mentions that he doesn't know how he managed to do this, but it seems he has found a way out of his problem. Meanwhile, Russell continues to beat Anton until he falls to the ground. He soon stops after Anton creates a comfortable hole in the ground. The students are all shocked by the events, and their jaws almost drop to the floor. The cheating professor wonders how this could have happened. While he is thinking, he hears a voice asking what he is doing. He quickly looks to the side. The trickster wonders how this could have happened. While he is thinking, he hears a voice asking what he is doing, and he quickly looks to the side. And Professor Rupert reminds him that he must announce the winner. The cheating professor stammers and quickly announces the winner. He declares loudly that Russell Raymond is the winner due to the strange events. The professor slowly walks towards him, praising Russell, awkwardly, and saying that he can leave. But Russell says, it is not over yet. When the professor asks what he means, our boy reminds him of the class rules. According to the class rules, unless a winner surrenders, he must have the right to call the next opponent. Anton's friends exclaim in shock, as they realize they are the ones who will get beaten next. Russell promptly points to one of them and says he is next. The system suddenly brings up another notification informing him that his new mission is to win the next magic duel, with rewards of 2 lower-grade mana stones and additional rewards for consecutive victories. Russell looks at the boy and tells him to go to the fighting circle. After the match, Professor Rupert murmurs to himself that our boy has won 14 consecutive duels considering the match. He reasons that Russell has great perception and seems proud to have recognized how much potential Russell had a long time ago. However, the professor begins to wonder how he was able to grow so quickly. He recalls all of his movements on the field in the meantime. Russell receives a notification that he has completed his mission and a compartment has been unlocked as a reward. The system informs that all of his rewards will be automatically placed in the compartment from now on. He also receives a series of mana stones as rewards for each fight he won. There also seems to be an unknown item in the compartment that the system gave him as a reward. Russell takes a look at the notification about the unknown item and wonders what it could be. He summons the compartment to find out. Our boy reaches inside and checks around. When he pulls it out, it turns out to be some kind of map where an X marks the spot. A notification appears again with a new mission, where he must go to the location on the map and complete the assigned mission there. The system notifies him that some lights will guide his way when he approaches the location. The reward for the mission is something unknown, as well as 5 intermediate-grade magic stones. The system issues a warning that it is better to attempt this mission after he reaches the 3rd circle. Russell is shocked when he reads that he would have to reach the 3rd circle. He thinks about the 3rd circle and remembers that he tried several times in his past life, but never managed to reach that level. Another problem is that he doesn't know where this mysterious place is and can't figure it out from the map. He quickly goes to the professor's library and hopes to find something that indicates where the place is. He places a series of books on the table and hopes to find a clue in one of them. The first one he finds is called Outer Territories of the Endymion Kingdom, and he flips through it anxiously. He has no luck with this one, so he checks the next. He doesn't find anything in it, so he checks the next. This one also has no information, so he checks another, but finds nothing. After checking dozens of books, he groans in frustration, realizing that none of the places in these books match the location he is looking for. He curses in frustration as he leaves the library, and realizes he has wasted a lot of time. he decides it would be better if he just focused on reaching the third circle first. As he walks down the hallway, several students shrink back in fear after witnessing his performance in the stadium. Russell thinks to himself that he managed to escape resentment and bullying. The only problem is that he is still lonely. While he is thinking, he hears someone calling him from behind. He looks back and discovers it is Professor Hubert, who warmly asks if he can see him in his office. Russell happily agrees to go see him. When they arrive at the office, Professor Hubert comments that summer vacation is almost here. He serves tea for both of them and asks Russell if he has any plans for the vacation. Russell says he doesn't have plans yet. Upon hearing this, Professor Hilbert asks if he would like to work with him on a research project, which surprises him. The professor mentions that, depending on how he performs, he might even have his name right after his, as an author. Russell picks up the research paper and looks at the image on it and recognizes the place. The professor asks what he is thinking. When he notices the surprise on his face, Russell quickly apologizes and tells Professor Hilbert that he actually has plans for the summer. The professor looks at him intrigued, asking why he had said he had no plans. Russell hands him the book and says he plans to go to the place drawn on the cover. He also hands him the map he obtained. Professor Hubert looks at the location on the map and recognizes the place as Maldiva. Sometime later, when summer vacation arrives, Russell begins his journey to Maldiva. He sits in the back of a carriage while enjoying the view through the window. Later, Russell calls the compartment again. He takes a mana stone from the compartment and throws it in his mouth. He tells himself that this will fill his stomach for the journey ahead. He tells himself that he will reach the third circle before arriving in Maldiva. Meanwhile, the professor thinks about the strangeness of Russell's trip. The reason it seems strange is because another person is also going to Maldiva. He believes that his teacher must be in Maldiva now, and it could be a good thing that Russell is going there. Meanwhile, in Maldiva, Daria is sunbathing on the beach and enjoying her vacation. She tells herself that the place may be her hometown, but it is always beautiful in her eyes. She drinks something and wonders how long it has been since she took a break. She realizes that she has been busy protecting the Empire, making magical research presentations, and even developing her students. The master remembers a time when she was talking to her student. She mentions the numbers 9, 6, and 3. To them, she creates fire in her hands and explains that these 3 numbers have a meaning, special for the wizards. The children are impressed by the depth of her skill and listen to her attentively. Darla teaches them that the 3 numbers mean the end, like a person who is already walking the path of magic. The 9th circle means the conclusion of a 6th. The circle for the wizard who has not yet reached there, and the suffering they will face to become a great wizard. The 3rd circle means something different. It means the beginning of a person being alone as a mage. Darla thinks about what it is like to be alone as a mage. Suddenly she remembers her encounter with Russell, and wonders if the child is okay. She continues, thinking about how she saw him reading an advanced magic book. Meanwhile, the carriage Russell is in finally arrives at Maldiva, and the coachman informs him that they have arrived at the destination. The coachman waits for a while and realizes that Russell is not getting down. When he goes back to check on his passenger, he exclaims shocked at the state he finds him in. Sometime later, Russell is furiously devouring some food. He tears a piece of hot dog with one hand while eating a piece of bread with the other. In front of him is a mountain of food, and he remembers that he used a lot of strength trying to calm the crazed mana when he was trying to draw the 3rd circle. In a flashback, when the carriage driver returned to check on him, the driver finds him unconscious and tries frantically to revive him, thinking he had died in the present. Russell gulps down a drink and is happy to have finally managed to reach the 3rd circle. He empties the cup in front of him and lets it drop on the table. He thinks about how amazing it is to have achieved 3rd circle magic. The fact that he has surpassed his limit from his past life, just months after returning to the past, left him astonished. He leaves some coins to pay for the food and prepares to leave. Upon leaving, he tells himself that he will have to go beyond the 3rd circle. The system brings back the mission that is connected to the map and notifies him to find the marked location on the map. The screen informs him that the light will guide him as soon as he takes the bold step of approaching the area, marked with an X. Russell checks the map again and realizes that he needs to find the place on the map, but he does not know the landscape. While he is still thinking about how he can get directions, he hears a tour guide informing some men that he will take them on the best tour of the Pompeii volcano. The tour guide shouts loudly and explains that he is offering a special discount just for today. Shortly after, Russell joins the tour and follows the guide. As he leads them along a rocky path, the tour guide tells them that Pompeii was originally a common mountain that somehow transformed into a volcano. The mountain suddenly turned into a volcano because a special creature began to live in it. His guide immediately mentions that there is only one creature With that description in the whole world, the creature is none other than the red dragon. Russell decides that it might be a good idea to start moving on his own. From this point, our boy crouches behind the other tourists and proceeds to jump off the cliff in question, while the guide is still telling the others about the site. Russell jumps off the cliff. Our boy leaps into the nearby river and begins to walk on the water. He says to himself that there might be a connection between this place and the reason he was sent back in time, his growth, his missions, and the rewards he has been receiving while following the map to a waterfall. He reasons that all of this could be leading to something. Our boy believes that everything he has gone through recently may have something to do with the dragon that once lived here. As he looks at the map, portions of light emerge from it and float in front of him. The light mixes and transforms into something circular that looks like an eye. Suddenly the beam of light pulls away from the map and begins to head somewhere. He remembers suddenly that this must be the light they told him would guide him. The light passes over the river and follows the path to the waterfall. Russell smiles slyly and realizes that his mission is behind the waterfall. He quickly casts a wind spell and shoots a wind arrow through the waterfall to clear a path. After that, our boy jumps directly through the hole to avoid getting wet when he enters and lands on a stone and discovers that there is a lava cave right behind the waterfall. He remembers that the system warned him to wait until reaching the third circle to come here, but he notices that he can't see any monsters or beasts here and wonders why the warning was issued. Our boy continues his cautious journey through the cave. With each step, he encounters some pillars, indicating that someone or some people lived here some time ago. He places his hands on one of the pillars and wonders how long it has been since it was built. While he is checking something catches his attention out of the corner of his eye. Finally, he finds the light he was following stop. In front of a strange door, Russell walks towards the door to investigate what is behind it. As he approaches the door, his senses suddenly start to tingle, and he feels as if something is wrong. He stops walking and wonders if he suddenly forgot the things he learned from his life as a mercenary. The question is, in a situation where there are no monsters, beasts, or any sound, there can only be one explanation. It means you have entered the territory of a strong predator. Suddenly, a huge lizard appears in front of Russell and looks at him. Russell jumps back to avoid having his head bitten. He is just a few meters away from the creature. He looks at it again and realizes that it is the Komodo dragon monster. He remembers his days as a mercenary, knowing that it is a monster that can only be defeated with at least 2 teams of mercenaries. Our boy watches the monster advance towards him and decides that the only thing he can do now is run, as there is no way to kill it. He decides to slow it down by casting some lightning magic. Russell chooses the second circle spell called Lightning Arrow and begins to generate one. The Komodo dragon roars at him again as it approaches. Our boy does not let fear take over and aims the arrow at its face. He shoots the arrow directly at it, hoping to land a hit and slow it down to have a chance to escape. The impact is so strong that it electrocutes the Komodo dragon and immobilizes it for a while. Russell is happy to have gained time with this move. He then decides to run. He heads straight for the stone gate, where he saw the light stop to reach the next part of this mission. When he is inches away from the door, the 2 statues in front of the door block his passage with their staffs and declare that he must prove he is worthy to enter with his mana. Russell is shocked by this and realizes that they will not let him pass easily. The Komodo dragon soon arrives where he is and seems to have recovered easily from the effects of the thunder. Russell looks back and realizes that he cannot go this way or the other. He thinks quickly and decides to do something erratic since his path is blocked. Turning in fury, he tells himself that he will have to create his own path. He extends his hand and generates a bit of fire, directing it towards the Komodo dragon. Suddenly, the stone at the door scans the mana that Russell is emitting. The monster notices the stone's response to Russell's mana and watches in shock. Instead of advancing, the Komodo dragon suddenly stops in front of Russell. He is equally surprised and wonders why the lizard suddenly stopped. The Komodo dragon straightens up and almost stands erect, and Russell just watches, completely confused. Suddenly, the guards blocking the gate retract their spears and stop blocking his way to the gate. The mysterious voice that spoke earlier tells him that he has proven his worth, which means he can now enter. The crimson stone on the gate begins to glow intensely. The light becomes much brighter, enveloping the entire cave where Russell is. Soon after, our boy wakes up with a terrible headache in a completely different place. He quickly examines the surroundings and realizes that things have changed. He touches the ground and realizes that it is made of ice. He wonders how he is standing on ice when he was in the cave moments ago. It is clear where he is, as all he can see is an ice cave and some ice statues. As he looks around, he remembers that he was in a cave just moments ago and wonders if he was brought here through teleportation magic. While he is thinking, he notices something strange right behind him. Next to him, a nearby staircase, also made of ice, carries a mysterious magical horn bound by a series of chains while he thinks a screen appears again. The screen notifies him that he has a second mission, which is to defeat all the ice golems in the area and complete the fire trial. A noise behind him makes him turn quickly to investigate. He realizes that the ice statues he saw were actually golems, and that they have now come to life. He looks around and notices that he is surrounded by several robust ice golems. He wonders if they really expect him to defeat all these golems. Alone, there is no time to waste. So he decides to get straight to the point and starts generating fire magic in his hands. He curses and mentions that this mission is very severe, but it seems there is nothing he can do. He generates another firebolt and shoots it at a golem. Next, like a madman, the firebolt travels through the ice cave and goes straight for the monster. The blast hits the golem, right in the chest, and it seems like it should cause good damage, since fire overcomes ice. Russell remembers that to kill a golem it is necessary to crush the core inside it. The golem he shot at seems completely intact. If it could speak, it seems like it would be asking if this is all he has. The fire blast only managed to leave a crack in its chest. It seems to be the end of the game for Russell, and it looks like he is going to become golem food. Russell grimaces at the sight and wonders how cold the ice it is made of. He decides to try another approach. If fire doesn't work, then he starts to create some wind magic in his hands. There seems to be a problem because the wind does not respond to him. Our boy realizes this and is shocked. He wonders why his wind magic suddenly isn't working. While he is still messing around, the golem lunges at him trying to smash his head into the ground. Russell quickly responds and decides to use some lightning instead. The lightning also doesn't appear, and Russell realizes he is fried. The golem strikes the spot where he is. Fortunately, Russell manages to move back before the blow hits. He retreats and stops when he reaches an ice wall. He thinks about the notification that came earlier, trying to gain some information about why his magic isn't working suddenly. He remembers that the system mentioned something about clearing a fire trial. Another golem comes to crush him like an insect waiting to smash him against the wall, but our boy quickly moves back again. Again, he suddenly realizes that he won't be able to use any magic here, other than fire, trying to avoid the monster. He trips over a chunk of ice. He is pushed towards the wall and ends up in a dead end. All the golems trap him in this dead end, and it seems like everything is going down the drain. Russell groans from the terrible impact of hitting the wall. His head starts to bleed, and it seems he also hit his head against the wall. With a deadly look in his eyes, our boy creates another firebolt and walks towards the golems. He finally faces the challenge. The golems playfully marvel as his entire body is surrounded by fire and mana. Russell launches 3 fireballs at once. The ice golem seems shocked by the sudden change of tactics but cannot get out of the way because the arrows are quite fast. The impact of the 3 balls is quite explosive. The core of the golem is exposed by the explosive balls. Russell proceeds to bring it down. He launches another bolt at the core and shatters the golem. Russell does the same with another nearby golem, and the method works. He starts to pant and realizes that he has only managed to take down 2 so far. At this rate, he will probably run out of mana before he can take down all of them. Our boy grimaces and decides to try something else. One of the golems tries to punch him into the ground, but our boy quickly retreats to replan. He considers that to break their solid layer of ice all at once, he needs to use something similar to the way knights break iron shields with a strike. To do this, he has to concentrate all his power on a single point. In the end, he believes he needs to concentrate more mass in each volume of his attacks. This is not going to be a simple magic, so he decides to move back further, to buy time to cast such a complicated spell. When he creates space between him and the golems, he begins the spell. He starts by creating a fire arrow. He applies the amplification formula to the arrow to make it larger and carry more weight to make the projects replicate. He adds the replication formula, everything works well, and several fire arrows appear. Finally, there is something else he needs to do to make the attack truly dense. He has to merge all the arrows into one. Then one arrow carries the power of several at once. He managed to replicate 5 fire arrows, and now he just needs to fuse them together. Russell begins to apply the magical compression formula. He unites everything between the palms of his hands and starts to transform everything into one. Suddenly, one of the ice golems appears in front of him. The golem advances towards him with a strong punch, and it seems that Russell is about to merge with the frozen ground. He begins to scream and begs for the arrow to merge quickly, so that he is not killed at the last moment. He fires the merged arrow, and a great explosion occurs. The explosion is so grand that it interrupts the golems in their path. One of them ends up with a huge hole in its chest due to the explosion where its core used to be. Russell steps back and lets the ice golem fall to the ground. He walks majestically with his newly created weapon that he calls the Fire Spear. Once again, his eyes transform into those of a dragon. The system gives him a notification that his understanding of the fire elements has transcended the limits. Russell agrees with the notification and says he can feel it. He reasons that the power he is feeling is close to something of the fifth circle. He holds the spear and notices that just maintaining the spear is a huge drain on energy. To avoid wasting energy, he makes the first move. The golems run towards him to show that they are not intimidated by his new and flashy weapon. He launches his attack from where he stands and burns the core of 3 of the golems and moves on to the next and the next. Russell counts that only 4 of them remain, then quickly proceeds to finish what he started. He easily breaks the core of one of them. He cuts a second with his weapon, destroying the core as well. Now only 2 remain. While he counts, one of the golems launches an aerial attack and tries to hit him, but he easily dodges. He jumps towards the monster to take it down. He cuts it in half for its insolence. After it falls, our boy begins to gasp, because he is running out of mana, but he cannot rest until all are down. The last golem decides to attack from a distance and throws huge ice rocks at him. Luckily, Russell blocks the rocks, but some hit him and he realizes that he would have been killed instantly if he hadn't blocked with his spear. At this point, he is left with just a breath of mana, and his spear begins to dematerialize. Russell stands up and holds the spear. He tells himself that it is the last thing he can do if that is the case. He decides to throw the spear at the monster. This is the final blow, so it is crucial. It would be terrible if he missed. Russell finally launches the arrow. When the monster gets close enough and hopes that it reaches him, finally, the arrow pierces its ice shield and reaches the core. Russell just stands there after his launch and watches the arrow pierce the monster. Our boy continues to watch and looks through the large opening in the monster's chest. When he realizes that he has defeated them all, he collapses to the ground. The system suddenly appears again and notifies him that he has completed the mission and will receive the reward of 2 low-grade mana stones and 3 stones of the lowest grade. He will also receive the unknown object. The unknown object is something called the Horn of the Forgotten King. It is discovered that the mysterious-looking object that Russell saw, chained, is the Horn of the Forgotten King. The horn is surrounded by fire. The screen appears again and shows that this is the Horn of the King, forgotten, and that it possesses fire essence. The horn begins to release a large amount of light that fills the entire ice cave. The light fills the cave, but Russell does not notice because he is fainting from exhaustion. The system indicates that he will need to enter the thoughts of the Forgotten King to receive his reward. Shortly after he wakes up in a strange place in this dimension, he is bound by chains and tries to recognize the place. The screen appears in front of him and informs him that he has obtained the unknown object called the Horn of the Forgotten King, with fire essence. It also shows that he must enter the thoughts of the Forgotten King to receive his reward. When he looks at his chains, he wonders what kind of reward this is, because he feels like he is being tortured. Suddenly, the voice of the Forgotten King emerges. The voice of the Forgotten King continues and tells him that he will grant him something called Fragment of the King. The horn appears where he is covered in fire. The tip of the horn begins to come towards him, and Russell is shocked, because it seems that he is about to be impaled. Just as he thought the horn pierces him, he screams in pain, and it becomes clear that the chains were placed there to prevent him from escaping this. The sharp tip of the horn pierces his flesh and enters him. The horn releases a large amount of energy into him, and he seems like he is about to explode. He continues to scream with all his might due to the pain. The voice continues and tells him to use the power to do something, but Russell can no longer hear. Because of what is happening, his body starts to burn, and he seems to be overloaded with mana. Behind him, a large dragon that appears to be the Forgotten King appears. Moments later, Russell appears on the shore after the water carried him there. Suddenly, he wakes up in pain because everything seems to hurt. He wonders what is happening and tries to figure out where he is. It seems to him that he is still in Maldives, because the style of the building indicates that. He is confused for a while, and it seems that his memory starts to fail. The system notifies him that he has consumed the Horn of the Forgotten King and reached a limit. He is also informed that the mana that was beyond his limit has been stored. The system also tells him that his intermediate understanding of flame attributes has reached its limit and has become an advanced understanding of flame attributes. Russell closes his palm and tries to activate his mana to confirm what he was told. His body suddenly releases a large amount of mana, incomparable to what he has experienced before. This shocks him, seeing how close he is to the fourth circle. He looks around and wonders if this mana is really coming from him. Our boy remembers the treatment he received when he was chained, but he smiles because the rewards are worth it. Suddenly, he hears someone's voice behind him, saying that it is good to see him here. Behind him is the great Miss Daria Snow White in casual clothes, which surprises him to see her in Maldives. She takes him to one of the bars, on the beach, and mentions that she felt a sudden explosion of mana. She said she came to check, and that's how she found Russell. He thanks her upon receiving the drink she offers him. He smiles, and says he didn't expect to see her in this place, while the master examines him with her eyes, and notices that he has almost reached the 4th circle in such a short time. She also notes that his mana has become purer during this time while they continue the conversation. Russell asks the master of the tower what is delaying Maldives. She said that Maldives is her hometown, but many people do not know that. Russell is surprised to hear this and asks again to confirm if he heard correctly. Miss Daria responds affirmatively and says that this is the reason she comes here every summer out of curiosity. She also decides to ask him what brings him to Maldives. Russell hesitates before answering and decides that it might be too early to tell the truth. He finally finds a good enough excuse and says he came to see more of the world. The master of the tower smiles at him and affirms his statement, but she wonders if she should check the child's abilities. She decides to move forward and then asks him if he minds helping her for a moment, and Russell seems confused by the question. Miss Daria snaps her fingers, and suddenly something magical happens. Fire surrounds Russell's body and dresses him in a black cloak. He recognizes the symbol on the cloak as the symbol of the flame tower and wonders why she hates him. The master tells him not to worry and informs him that the task she wants to give him is something that he can handle. A screen suddenly appears and notifies him that his new mission is to pass the test of Miss Snow White. He is informed that he will have to help her fight human trafficking pirates at the Maldives port to pass the test. The reward for completing the mission is a mid-grade mana stone. The master mentions that she is sure he is already aware that in Diamond, slavery is strictly prohibited. She explains that this is why they do not allow human trafficking ships to dock at their port. Unfortunately, there are still some people who ignore their laws. She informs him that there are some people trying to unload their human trafficking ship near Maldives, and would like him to help her deal with them that night. Both board a boat and proceed to carry out the mission. Miss Daria informs that she can do the mission alone. The only problem is that the plan involves rescuing the victims as well as taking the ship. Russell realizes and tells her that this means they need to pretend to launch an attack to distract the enemies and rescue the victims. The master praises his quick understanding. As they continue their journey, Russell thinks deeply. He considers the fact that 100 wizards would come running, even barefoot, if the master of the flame tower asked for help from any of them. So, if she is specifically asking him for help, it is not because she really needs him, but because she wants to test him. Soon they arrive at the ship they are looking for. Before leaving the boat, she tells him that what happens from now on may be too much for him. She explains that he has to deal with this, because the path of a guardian is not always smooth and noble. Apparently, this is just another fate of the wizards. After finishing speaking, she steps to the edge of the boat to go to the ship. She levitates to the side of the ship and tells him that she will draw their attention and make it seem like an attack, which will give him enough time to save the people who were kidnapped. Russell just watches as the master of the flame tower flies to the top of the ship, and he seems quite tense. Miss Daria flies up until she reaches a comfortable height above the ship. When she reaches an adequate height, she stops and says, "This height should be enough." Suddenly she begins to activate her human form. The whole place fills with a bright and blinding light, and she shouts for Russell to go help the people. When the pirates see the bright light, they become afraid of being attacked. They go to the deck and start preparing a large crossbow to shoot at the master of the fire tower. Several of the men arm themselves with smaller crossbows and prepare to protect the ship. Their leader gives the signal and tells them to shoot at the light that is above the ship. Dozens of arrows fly through the sky, aiming at the light above the ship. Miss Daria just smiles within the light in front of their pathetic attempts to attack her. One of the soldiers begins to curse when he realizes that his arrows did not reach the master. Miss Daria creates a ball of lava in her hands and throws it in the direction of the ship, causing it to break into several pieces. Master Daria says she would like to see if they are as skilled as they are bold. On the deck, the lava portions fall onto the ship and start small. Fires around the pirates see the fires and are shocked. One of them tries to put out the fire by stepping on it, but it doesn't work. Eventually, a flaming hand comes out of the fire and grabs the man's leg. After all, they are not fire, but golems made of fire. The guy is extremely shocked as he struggles with the small creature clinging to his leg. All the pieces of fire transform into small flaming dwarves that also seem to hold weapons made of fire. The men crowd around the golems, unsure of how to deal with them. These golems were specially created by Miss Daria Stone White and are called burning wood dwarves, while the men shrink back in fear. One of them, who is quite confident, walks towards the golems with his axe. Meanwhile, Russell climbs onto the ship. He manages to jump inside the ship. While the men are distracted, the confident man tells the others to move, as there is no reason to be afraid. Russell watches as the man approaches one of the golems and tries to deal with it. He watches as the man brings down his axe on the golem, which just innocently watches him. The arrogant guy swings his axe and splits the golem in half. Moments later, the golem begins to repair its body again, and does not seem very happy. Russell continues to watch, and is impressed to see these creatures in person. The attacked golem responds and changes shape, starting to wrap around the man's legs shortly after. The golem completely changes shape and wraps around the man, igniting. Russell is shocked by how quickly the golem can transform its body. Meanwhile, the other men watch horrified as their companion is burned to death. Russell snaps out of his trance and decides that it is not the best time to keep watching these things. In shock, he leaves the area and descends some stairs to reach the interior of the ship below the deck. There is a large prison facility that probably houses the captives. The guard notices the commotion and wonders what is happening on the deck. One of the prisoners shouts that it seems the Navy has come to rescue them, and he rejoices at being safe. The guard bangs on the door with his weapon to scare them and prevent them from speaking. He says that no matter what happens, none of them will ever escape his control, and the men shrink back in fear. When they go quiet, he asks if they heard what he said. Meanwhile, Russell puts a hand on his neck. Our boy decides to knock him out, so he uses a bit of lightning magic. A bolt of lightning appears out of nowhere and strikes the fat man. One of the prisoners notices the guard unconscious and approaches to ask if he came to save them. He smiles at the man and says he came to save them, but informs that it is safer for them to stay inside until all the pirates have left. The man falls to his knees and begins to thank God for answering his prayers. Russell looks around and wonders how many people are confined in this small area. While they wait, our boy sees something quite disturbing. He sees a boy crouched in a cell and is shocked that the heartless pirates are even selling children as slaves. He becomes really angry and calls the pirates filthy bastards. Moments later, some of the other men arrive at the prison and spot Russell. The men quickly notice the unconscious body of their comrade lying on the floor. They realize that the ship has been invaded by the enemy, and one of them tells the others to capture the bastard who invaded the ship. The three men draw their swords and move towards Russell. Our boy, who was already irritated that they had kidnapped a child, declares that he will be the only one to capture them. He begins to create a chain of lightning. He uses a second circle magic called lightning chain and launches the chain towards them. The chain jumps from one person to another and electrocutes all three men on the spot. They are all electrocuted and fall unconscious. One of them threatens that something bad will happen if their captain comes, but Russell doesn't let him finish the sentence and electrocutes him with more lightning. Our boy continues checking the other room in the prison facility. He enters a dark cell and asks what's wrong with it. One of the people inside the cell asks if he is a mage from the fire tower. Watson quickly creates a ball of light in his hands so he can see better in the dark cell. What he sees shocks him because he realizes that the cell contains several elves. The male elf asks again if he is a mage from the flame tower. Russell realizes he must be asking this because of the symbol on his cloak. He informs the elf that he is not yet a member of the flame tower, but receives a rude response when the elf says it doesn't matter what he says. The elf stands in front of the gate with a disdainful expression and tells him to open the door already. Russell thinks to himself that he will obviously open the door, but wonders why this guy is so annoying. Even knowing that elves are known for having huge egos, he takes a good look at the guy and wonders if he should just leave them there. Suddenly, another voice comes from inside the cell and tells the first guy to stop. The elf among them reminds the first guy to behave. The other male elves are startled by her voice and call her Elo. She tries to get up, and they help her stand. Elo informs the others that Russell is not an ordinary human. She walks toward the gate and tells them that he possesses mana as pure as the light of a sunset. Apparently, Russell is emitting a spirit scent. Then she smiles at him and says the other elves are shocked by the statement that the mage is not human. The most talkative one asks Elo what she meant by that. Russell is equally shocked by her declaration and wonders what she means by the scent of a spirit. The elves are perplexed and wonder how a human can exude the scent of a spirit. Even Russell starts to sniff himself, trying to catch the scent of the spirit that Elo mentioned. While he is trying to smell himself, the talkative elf calls out to him, asking Russell to save him from there and even bows to him. All the elves in the prison do the same. The talkative one starts to plead. Russell feels a bit uncomfortable watching them. He realizes that all the elves, generally known for their big egos, were easily swayed by a phrase from the elf. He looks at her and wonders if she is a high elf. Later, he begins to channel a bit of heat into the lock and tries to break it. While he is at it, Ilo refers to him as a guardian and asks if he defeated the pirates and bosses. Russell wonders what she means by bosses. Meanwhile, in the other room of the prison, a knight in armor enters and finds the guards on the floor in the hidden room. Ilo explains to Russell that the bosses are more powerful adversaries. She says they are more powerful than their warriors, who are very skilled with magic. Meanwhile, the knight observes the trail of bodies and notices that the door to the other compartment is open. A sly smile crosses his face as he thinks about everything he will do to the intruder. Meanwhile, in the convicts area, the pirates continue trying to fight against the fire golems. The captain watches the fight while trying to stabilize the ship. The captain finally stabilizes the boat and proceeds to draw his sword. Suddenly, he rushes to the lower convicts area and decides to join the fun. He quickly cuts off the heads of the fire golems, and it seems they cannot recover this time. The talkative one starts to plead. Russell feels a bit uncomfortable while observing them. He realizes that all the elves, generally known for their big egos, were easily swayed by a phrase from the elf. He looks at her and wonders if she is a high elf. Later, he begins to generate a bit of heat in the lock and tries to break it. While he is at it, Hilo refers to him as a guardian and asks if he defeated the pirates and bosses. Russell wonders what she means by bosses. Meanwhile, in the other prison room, a man in knight armor enters and finds the guards on the floor in the hidden room. Hilo informs Russell that the bosses are more powerful adversaries. She says they are more powerful than their warriors, who are very skilled with magic. Meanwhile, the knight observes the trail of bodies and notices that the door to the other compartment is open. A sly smile crosses his face. As he thinks about everything he will do to the intruder, the pirates continue to try to fight against the fire golems. The captain watches the fight while trying to stabilize the ship. The captain finally stabilizes the boat and proceeds to draw his sword. Suddenly, he rushes to the lower deck and decides to join the fun. He quickly cuts off the heads of the fire golems, and it seems they cannot recover this time. When they disappear, he asks the men if they were all fighting over such a light attack. Meanwhile, the captain has a glow around him, which means he is a knight. The men begin to celebrate as the captain joins them, and shout loudly to Darla that she is lost. The lady from the area watches them amused, surprised that they managed to handle her fire creatures. She decides to come down from her height and join them on the ship to investigate what is really happening. Seconds later, the master lands on the deck of the ship, and all eyes turn to her. When the pirates are shocked to see her coming towards them, the captain smiles at her and comments that she has the courage to close the distance between them. Darla looks at him cheerfully and says it seems he is the captain. The captain proudly affirms his position as captain and tells her that he is called Dom Click. Darla examines his body and his sword and realizes that he is using something called aura. The only explanation for this is that he must have been a knight before, so she asks what he is doing on a pirate ship. Dom laughs for a while and asks her if the honor of a knight feeds meals and pays taxes. He laughs heartily and confesses that the Click brothers are making much more from the slave trade. When Dom tires of the conversation, he draws his sword and prepares to attack the wizard. He covers the distance between them in the blink of an eye and tries to cut her. Unfortunately, he fails to land his attack before the master of the flame tower flies back and dodges his attack. Meanwhile, below the conversation, a large cut appears in the wall of the internal prison compartment. Meanwhile, he tries to explain to him that the bosses are dangerous. He quickly turns to see what had hit the wooden walls. The cut transforms into a loud explosion that makes the wall collapse. Russell steps away from the smoke but tries to see what is behind it. He quickly shields himself to avoid being hit. The second Click brother jokes that Russell managed to block his attack. The knight then draws his sword and approaches him. As he gets closer, he realizes that Russell must be a wizard. Meanwhile, Russell notices that he is using an aura that is exclusive to knights. The system gives him a new mission and informs him that he is facing a tough fight. The mission is to win his first battle against the swordsman. Hilo feels tense due to the knight's presence and warns Russell to be careful. She informs him that the second Click brother is the vice captain of this ship, which means he is quite dangerous. The vice captain simply draws his oddly shaped sword with a big smile on his face. He tells Russell that he may be a wizard, but he is still a child. As the night progresses, he asks Russell why he just didn't con the men. He comments that he should have killed them when he had the chance. The vice captain tells Russell that he will show him how it's done. Russell also activates his own aura, using his mana. Our boy thinks to himself that fire magic causes a lot of damage in the surrounding area, because it is made of wood. So, he decides to use lightning magic, especially since the man is wearing iron armor. He uses a lightning bolt and fires several bolts at the vice captain. The vice captain quickly notices his attack and moves his sword to block it. Before the bolts reach him, the vice captain breaks the wooden floor in front of him and throws some of the fragments into the air to stop the approaching bolts. He praises Russell's quick thinking because he realized that the sword and the suit should be conductors. Suddenly, instead of blocking the bolts flying around, the vice captain advances towards them and tells Russell that there is something he is missing. Russell notices that the bolts flying around are not affecting his armor and continues to fire bolts while our boy shoots a new set of bolts. The vice captain continues to advance towards him, and he says that his attacks will not work on him. When the bolts approach the vice captain, he simply smiles and blocks them with his iron sword. The bolts hit the sword and dissipate instead of electrocuting the knight. Russell, who is still at the shield, looks horrified and wonders how the man's sword is not conducting electricity. The vice captain approaches him and swings his sword towards his shield. The vice captain lands a strong blow on the shield, but it does not seem to break it. Suddenly, the knight stops striking and simply slowly removes his sword from the point where it hit. Upon removing the sword, Russell notices something surprising. There is a large crack at the spot where the man struck with his sword, and it seems that his sword is not ordinary. Suddenly, the struck part opens up in fissures. Meanwhile, in the conversation, Dom Click rushes quickly towards the Flame Tower Master and attempts to slice her in half, successfully landing the hit. However, he is shocked to realize that it was merely a decoy that then explodes in flames. When he finishes his attack, he sees Daria in front of him, surrounded by flames, hissing. He comments that she is very good at escaping, but Daria does not respond. When she finally speaks, she asks if his brother is also a knight. Dom Click. He proudly replies that his brother is also a knight, but adds that his brother is not as amazing as he is.